The cafeteria of the Intergalactic Institute for Advanced Study hummed with activity, a tapestry of species from across the cosmos exchanging laughter and conversation. Even in this extraordinary environment, 18-year-old Kevin Lancer felt impossibly out of place. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic scene, and Kevin was painfully aware of every curious glance directed his way. He stood in line with his standard tray of food cubes, shifting uneasily as the alien students around him chittered in languages he couldn't begin to understand. Kevin had barely settled at a table, grateful for a moment of solitude, when a shadow loomed over him. Glancing up, he saw Professor Vrilic, a towering Kraylan scientist known for their unyielding gaze and obsession with genetics. Their shimmering exoskeleton reflected the pale light of the cafeteria, making them look even more intimidating. "Mr. Lancer," Vrilic said, their voice a curious blend of clicking and synthesized tones. "Your presence is required in the Advanced Genetics Lab. Now." Kevin blinked, his fork halfway to his mouth. Now?" "I was just." "Now," Vrilic repeated, their mandibles clicking with finality. The room had gone quiet. Students of all species stared as Kevin awkwardly stood, muttering apologies to no one in particular, and followed the professor out. His mind raced. What could they possibly want with him? He'd done his best to keep his head down since arriving on campus, knowing he was the only human enrolled at the institute. The prospect of being singled out by one of the galaxy's top scientists wasn't just nerve-wracking, it was terrifying. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the institute, Kevin couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The air was too still, the usually busy halls eerily empty. Finally, they reached the lab, and the doors slid open with a faint hiss. Kevin hesitated, staring into the cavernous space filled with blinking equipment, holoscreens, and containment pods. A dozen other scientists, all from different species, turned to look at him with expressions Kevin couldn't decipher. Is there a problem?" Kevin ventured, trying to sound casual despite his heart hammering in his chest. "Quite the opposite," Vrilic said, motioning for him to step forward. "We've made a remarkable discovery, and you are at the center of it." Kevin frowned, his unease deepening. "Me? I'm just a kid from Earth. What could I possibly have to do with your research?" "Everything," another scientist, a squid-like Relorian, interjected, their tentacles rippling with excitement. "Your DNA contains sequences that are anomalous. Unique. Possibly even alien." Kevin laughed nervously. "Alien? That's got to be a mistake. I'm as human as it gets." The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Holoscreens lit up, displaying complex genetic diagrams that meant nothing to Kevin. Vrilic stepped forward, their gaze unwavering. "We ran extensive tests, Mr. Lancer. Your genetic code contains markers that do not originate on Earth. In fact, they match ancient sequences we've only ever found in one place, the ruins of Veridax Prime." Kevin stared at them, his brain struggling to process what he'd just heard. Veridax Prime? That's light years away. How could my DNA have anything to do with that? "That," Vrilic said, "is what we intend to find out." Before Kevin could protest, he was ushered onto a diagnostic platform, the machinery humming to life around him. "Hold still," one of the scientists instructed, as a series of beams scanned him from head to toe. Kevin wanted to argue, to demand answers, but he was too overwhelmed to do anything but comply. Minutes stretched into an eternity before the scans were complete. The scientists gathered around a central console, their voices a chaotic jumble of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones. Kevin could only catch fragments of their discussion, but the tension in the room was palpable. Finally, Vrilic turned to him, their expression inscrutable. "The evidence is irrefutable, Mr. Lancer. You are not entirely human. Your DNA contains fragments of an ancient species believed to be extinct for over 1,000,000 years. You are, in essence, a living relic." Kevin's knees felt like they might give out. "You've got to be kidding me," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived my whole life on Earth. My parents are human. This doesn't make any sense." Vrilic stepped closer, their gaze softening slightly. We understand this is difficult to process, but the implications of this discovery are profound. You may hold the key to unlocking secrets that have eluded us for millennia. Secrets? Kevin echoed, his head spinning. What kind of secrets? Veridax Prime was once home to a civilization more advanced than any in recorded history, the Relorian scientist explained. They vanished without a trace, leaving behind only ruins and fragmented genetic samples. If you truly carry their DNA, you might possess knowledge, or abilities, that could change the galaxy. Kevin felt like the walls were closing in. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank or a colossal mistake. But the intensity in the scientist's eyes told him otherwise. What happens now? He asked, his voice trembling. Vrilic's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. Now, we determine the full extent of your genetic inheritance. This is an opportunity, Mr. Lancer, one that could place you at the center of galactic history. Kevin swallowed hard, his mind racing with 1,000 questions and no answers. He had come to the Institute hoping to prove that humans could hold their own in the wider galaxy. Now, it seemed, he was about to find out just how much more there was to his own story, and what it might cost him. Kevin sat in stunned silence as the whirring of the diagnostic platform faded into the background. The walls of the lab, sleek and lined with alien tech, seemed to press in on him, crowding his thoughts with implications he wasn't ready to confront. Vrilic stood nearby, observing him with an unsettling intensity, while the other scientists continued their excited chatter, oblivious to his rising panic. This has to be some kind of mistake, Kevin muttered, more to himself than anyone else. I've never even been off Earth before coming here. How could I be connected to some ancient alien civilization? Vrilic's segmented eyes shimmered with what Kevin assumed was a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. The evidence is indisputable, Mr. Lancer. But I understand your apprehension. Discoveries of this magnitude are rarely easy to accept. Kevin barely heard the words. His mind replayed every mundane memory of his life on Earth, looking for something, anything, that might explain this bizarre revelation. Family picnics, school science fairs, awkward teenage crushes, none of it screamed descendant of a lost alien race. So, what now? Kevin finally asked, his voice edged with frustration. Are you going to study me like a lab rat? Poke and prod until you figure out what makes me so special? Vrilic's mandibles clicked, a sound Kevin was starting to associate with amusement. Nothing so crude, I assure you. But we do require your cooperation. There are tests, some invasive, some less so, that will help us understand the extent of your genetic divergence. Without this data, we cannot determine your potential significance. Significance, Kevin repeated, bitterness creeping into his tone. You mean I'm just a puzzle piece to you? A key to unlocking whatever you're really after. The Kraylan scientists tilted their head. If you are indeed a link to the Veridax civilization, you may hold knowledge encoded within your genome, knowledge that could reshape the galaxy as we know it. I would think a human such as yourself would find that prospect exhilarating. Kevin opened his mouth to argue but stopped short. Exhilarating? Hardly. Terrifying? Absolutely. But there was a flicker of something deeper, a part of him that couldn't deny the sheer enormity of what this could mean. For as long as he could remember, Kevin had felt like he didn't quite belong. Maybe this was why. Fine, he said after a long pause. I'll cooperate. But no needles unless I say so, got it? Vrilic's mandibles twitched again, and Kevin decided to interpret it as a smile. Agreed. For now. The first test was deceptively simple. Kevin was led to a containment chamber where an array of strange devices surrounded him. Wires, conduits, and blinking orbs of light pulsed rhythmically, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere. A voice crackled over the intercom, one of the other scientists speaking in heavily accented galactic common. Mr. Lancer, please focus your thoughts on a specific memory, a significant one. We are calibrating the resonance field. Kevin sighed. Significant how? You mean, like, the first time I kissed someone or when I accidentally microwaved a fork? Anything deeply tied to your emotions will suffice, the scientist replied, entirely missing the sarcasm. Kevin rolled his eyes and closed them, reluctantly digging into his past. He thought of the day his parents had dropped him off at the spaceport, their faces a mixture of pride and worry. He remembered the awkward goodbye hugs, the weight of their hopes resting on his shoulders. His chest tightened as the memory resurfaced. Suddenly, the devices around him sprang to life. Lights flashed erratically, and the hum in the room grew to a high-pitched whine. Kevin's eyes snapped open just in time to see a holographic projection flicker into existence, a shimmering, indistinct image that filled the chamber with an otherworldly glow. "What the hell is that?" he demanded, stepping back instinctively. The scientists outside the chamber erupted into chaos, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of excitement. Vrilek's voice cut through the noise like a razor. "Fascinating. The resonance field is reacting to his neural patterns, generating imagery from stored genetic data." Kevin gaped at the projection as it slowly stabilized. The image showed a massive structure, an ancient, sprawling city with towers of crystalline material and rivers of light flowing through its streets. The architecture was unlike anything Kevin had ever seen, yet there was something eerily familiar about it, like a melody he couldn't quite place. "Is that Veridax Prime?" Kevin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Impossible," one of the scientists muttered. "No detailed visuals of the city have ever been recorded. This is unprecedented." Kevin stared at the city, his chest tightening further. The image shifted, zooming in on a central plaza where a crowd of beings, tall, elegant, and unmistakably alien, gathered around a glowing obelisk. One of them turned, their face startlingly clear. Kevin felt the air rush out of his lungs. The alien looked exactly like him. The discovery sent ripples through the institute. News of the projection spread quickly, and Kevin suddenly found himself the center of attention wherever he went. Aliens of all shapes and sizes approached him, some with curiosity, others with outright reverence, as if he were some kind of messianic figure. He hated it. "Do you ever get the feeling the universe is playing a joke on you?" Kevin muttered to himself as he sat in his dormitory, trying and failing to focus on his coursework. The holographic image of the city haunted him, its details burned into his memory. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that alien face, the one that was his and yet wasn't. A sharp knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find an unexpected visitor, Zix, a Zarian student he'd befriended during orientation. The four-armed, beetle-like alien clicked nervously, their antennae twitching. "I heard what happened," Zix said, their voice low. "Are you okay?" Kevin sighed and motioned for them to come in. "Define okay." "Apparently, I'm not who, or what, I thought I was. And now everyone's acting like I'm some kind of walking miracle. It's a lot." Zix settled into a chair, their mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "I don't envy you. But if the scientists are right, you might have answers to questions the galaxy has been asking for eons. That's kind of amazing." Kevin slumped onto his bed, running a hand through his hair. "Amazing? It feels more like a nightmare. I didn't sign up for this." "Maybe not," Zix said, leaning forward, "but you're here now. And if anyone can handle this, it's you. You're stubborn, remember? You once argued with Professor Glarick for 30 minutes over whether Earth music qualifies as art." Despite himself, Kevin chuckled. "It does. I'll die on that hill." Zix clicked in agreement. "Then fight for this, too. Whatever happens, you're not alone. I'm here, and I know others will be, too." For the first time since the ordeal began, Kevin felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Zix was right. Maybe he didn't have to face this alone. But deep down, he knew the hardest battles were yet to come. The chamber was deathly silent as Kevin stared at the holographic projection of the alien city shimmering before him. It wasn't just the city or the eerie familiarity of the alien who looked like him, it was the overwhelming sense that something ancient, something alive, was reaching out to him. The projections weren't random, nor were they benign. He could feel it now, a strange hum at the base of his skull, a pull he couldn't ignore. Vrillik's voice broke the stillness. "Mr. Lancer, do you feel anything unusual? Any resonance?" Kevin hesitated, unsure of how to articulate the sensation. "I don't know. It's in my head. A vibration or a whisper, but I can't make out what it's saying. Does that make sense?" The Kralin scientist's mandibles clicked in what Kevin had learned was a sign of intrigue. "More than you realize. This suggests an active link to the genetic memory embedded within your DNA. Extraordinary." Kevin's frustration boiled over. "Extraordinary? You think this is cool? I'm practically hearing voices, and you're geeking out like I'm some kind of science project." The other scientists glanced nervously at one another, but Vrillik remained calm. "Your frustration is understandable, but you must grasp the importance of what's happening. If the Veridax left encoded messages within their descendants, it could be the key to understanding why their civilization fell, and why you exist." Kevin felt the weight of their words, but couldn't shake the fear curling in his gut. "And what happens if I don't want to find out?" "You don't have a choice," Vrillik said matter-of-factly. "The resonance has begun. If left unresolved, the strain could overwhelm your neural pathways." Kevin's stomach dropped. "So, you're saying I could die if I don't figure this out?" "Potentially," the scientist admitted. "But that is why we must proceed quickly. The holographic imagery is only the first step. We need to access the deeper layers of your genetic memory too." A deafening alarm cut Vrillik off mid-sentence. The lab lights flickered, bathing the room in an ominous red glow. Holoscreens flashed warnings in multiple languages, but one word appeared repeatedly in Galactic Common: breach. The scientists scrambled to their stations, shouting orders and pulling up security feeds. Kevin's heart raced as the room descended into chaos. "What's going on?" Vrillik turned to him, their exoskeleton gleaming under the emergency lighting. "Someone has infiltrated the Institute. They're heading for this lab." Kevin's blood ran cold. "Infiltrated? Who? Why?" "Most likely," Vrillik said grimly, "they've come for you." The lab's reinforced doors groaned as something slammed against them from the other side. Kevin backed away instinctively, his heart pounding as the scientists hurried to secure their equipment. Vrillik remained eerily composed, even as cracks began to spiderweb across the door's surface. "Activate the containment shield," Vrillik ordered. One of the scientists, a bulbous-headed Lixarian, hesitated. "But Professor, if they breach the lab while the shield is active, we'll be trapped inside." Vrillik's mandibles clicked sharply. "Do it. Now." The scientist obeyed, and a shimmering blue energy field enveloped the room just as the doors burst open. A group of figures stormed in, their movements precise and coordinated. They wore sleek, black armor adorned with alien glyphs, and their weapons pulsed with an ominous green light. Their leader, a tall figure with glowing eyes, scanned the room before fixing their gaze on Kevin. "There he is," the leader said, their voice distorted through a translator. "Take him." Kevin froze, his instincts screaming at him to run even though there was nowhere to go. "What the hell do you want with me?" he demanded, his voice cracking. The leader stepped forward, their expression unreadable beneath their helmet. "You carry the legacy of the Veridax. Surrender peacefully, and no one else will be harmed." Kevin's fear gave way to anger. "Yeah, I'll pass. Thanks." The leader tilted their head, clearly unamused. "You don't understand what's at stake, human. The Veridax were more than a civilization, they were architects of reality itself. If their secrets fall into the wrong hands." "You mean your hands?" Kevin shot back. "Not happening." Before the leader could respond, Vrillik stepped between them, their exoskeleton flaring with bioluminescent patterns. "You will not take him. He is under the protection of this institute, and we do not yield to threats." The leader raised a hand, and the armored intruders opened fire. Energy blasts ricocheted off the containment shield, filling the air with a high-pitched whine. The scientist scrambled for cover, and Kevin ducked behind a console, his heart hammering in his chest. "Stay down!" Vrillik shouted, moving with surprising agility to shield Kevin from the crossfire. The room descended into chaos. The intruders pressed forward, their weapons battering the shield with relentless force. The energy field flickered, its strength waning under the sustained assault. Kevin's thoughts raced. He couldn't just sit there and wait to be captured, or worse. Then he felt it again, the hum in his skull, louder this time, more insistent. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a presence. Something deep within him was stirring, like a dormant engine roaring to life. Without fully understanding why, Kevin closed his eyes and focused. The sensation grew stronger, flooding his mind with images of the alien city, the glowing obelisk, and the being that looked like him. They weren't just memories, they were instructions. "Vrillik!" Kevin shouted over the noise. "Turn off the shield." The Kralin scientist whipped around, their expression incredulous. "Are you insane? They'll kill us. Just trust me." Kevin pleaded, the hum in his mind building to an almost unbearable pitch. "I can stop them." For a moment, Vrillik hesitated, their mandibles twitching with indecision. Then, with a sharp gesture, they deactivated the containment shield. The intruders surged forward, their weapons trained on Kevin. But before they could fire, the hum in Kevin's mind exploded outward. A wave of energy erupted from his body, sending the intruders flying backward. Their weapons short-circuited, and their armor crackled with electricity as they collapsed to the ground. Kevin stood in the center of the room, his entire body glowing with a faint, golden light. He stared at his hands, both awed and terrified by what he had just done. What was that?" Vrillik approached cautiously, their eyes wide with astonishment. "That, Mr. Lancer, was Veridak's technology, living technology, reactivating within you." Kevin didn't have time to process the revelation. The intruders were already stirring, and the leaders struggled to their feet, their glowing eyes narrowing. "You don't know what you're dealing with, boy. This power, it will consume you." Kevin clenched his fists, the glow around him intensifying. "Maybe. But for now, it's mine." With another burst of energy, he sent the intruders hurtling out of the lab. The doors slammed shut behind them, and the security systems reactivated, sealing the breach. Kevin collapsed to his knees, the glow fading as exhaustion overtook him. Vrillik knelt beside him, their voice uncharacteristically gentle. "You've only scratched the surface of your potential. But there will be others who seek to claim it, for good or ill." Kevin looked up at the scientist, his breath ragged. "What do I do now?" Vrillik's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You learn to control it. And you decide what kind of legacy you wish to leave behind." For the first time, Kevin felt the weight of his situation truly sink in. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the galaxy, the Veridaks, and the dangerous power now coursing through his veins. And he wasn't sure he was ready for any of it. Kevin sat alone in the observation deck of the Institute, gazing out at the swirling stars beyond the massive viewing window. The silence was suffocating, yet he welcomed it after the chaos of the past days. His body still felt foreign to him, as though it belonged to someone, or something, else. The golden energy that had erupted from him in the lab lingered like a ghost in his muscles, a reminder of the power he hadn't asked for but now couldn't escape. Behind him, the soft clatter of approaching footsteps broke the stillness. He didn't need to turn around to know it was Vrillik. "You're brooding," the Kralin scientist observed, their mandibles clicking lightly. "It is not a productive use of your time." Kevin snorted. "Yeah, well, excuse me for not being thrilled about turning into a galactic science experiment." Again. Vrillik stepped closer, their reflection shimmering in the glass. "What you experienced in the lab was merely the beginning. The energy you channeled was a fragment of what the Veridaks encoded and their descendants. If you can harness it, you could accomplish feats that defy imagination." Kevin shook his head, his expression bitter. "You make it sound like a gift. But all I see is a target painted on my back." Vrilek tilted their head, their bioluminescent patterns flickering thoughtfully. Power always draws attention, both good and bad. But how you use it determines whether you are remembered as a savior or a cautionary tale. Kevin stood abruptly, shoving his hands into his pockets. You don't get it. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to prove that humans could hold their own out here, not, he gestured vaguely, struggling for the right words. Whatever this is. Before Vrilek could respond, the room's intercom crackled to life. Professor Vrilek, Mr. Lancer, report to the command center immediately. The intruders have returned, and they're not alone. The command center was a flurry of activity. Holoscreens displayed live feeds of the Institute's perimeter, where dozens of ships hovered menacingly, their weapons charged. The leader of the previous attack appeared on the main screen, their glowing eyes burning with barely contained rage. This is your final warning, the leader intoned, their voice cold. Surrender the human, or we will reduce your institute to rubble. Kevin clenched his fists, a knot of fear tightening in his chest. Why are they so obsessed with me? Your connection to the Veridax, Vrilek explained, their tone grim. If they believe you hold the key to unlocking the Veridax's secrets, they will stop at nothing to obtain it. Kevin's mind raced. The images from the lab, the city, the obelisk, the alien who looked like him, flashed through his thoughts. He hadn't just been seeing memories, he'd been seeing instructions, fragments of knowledge buried deep within his DNA. The intruders didn't just want him, they wanted what he represented, a link to unimaginable power. I can't let them destroy this place, Kevin said, his voice steady despite the fear churning inside him. Vrilek turned to him, their segmented eyes narrowing. What are you suggesting? Kevin hesitated, knowing how insane his next words would sound. I think I can stop them. But I'll need your help. The plan came together hastily, a mix of desperation and calculated risk. Kevin stood in the lab once again, surrounded by the same equipment that had revealed his connection to the Veridax. Scientists buzzed around him, making adjustments and recalibrating devices, while Vrilek oversaw the preparations. Are you sure about this? Zix asked, their antennae twitching anxiously. If you're wrong, this could fry your brain, or worse. Kevin offered his friend a shaky smile. I don't think I have a choice. If I can access more of the Veridax's memories, maybe I can figure out how to use their technology against these guys. Vrilek nodded approvingly. The resonance field will amplify the connection, but it will also strain your neural pathways. You must maintain focus, or the feedback could be catastrophic. No pressure, Kevin muttered, stepping onto the platform. As the machines powered up, the hum in his mind returned, stronger and sharper than before. He closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him. Images flooded his thoughts, fractals of light, alien symbols, and flashes of the city. The obelisk appeared again, its surface glowing with inscriptions that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Then he heard it, a voice, ancient and melodic, speaking in a language he didn't understand yet somehow comprehended. The architects fell because they feared their creation. Do not fear, child of two worlds. Embrace what you are. The voice faded, leaving Kevin with a sudden clarity. The Veridax hadn't just encoded memories in their descendants, they had left behind the means to defend their legacy. The intruders' ships began their assault, firing volleys of plasma at the Institute's shields. Alarms blared as the defensive barriers flickered under the onslaught. Inside the command center, chaos reigned as staff scrambled to coordinate a response. Then, without warning, a surge of golden light erupted from the Institute's core. The energy expanded outward, enveloping the facility in a shimmering dome that absorbed the incoming fire. On the command center's main screen, the leader of the intruders stared in disbelief. What is this? They demanded. What have you done? The answer came in the form of Kevin, who now stood at the edge of the Institute's perimeter, his body radiating the same golden energy. His voice rang out, amplified by the resonance field. You want the power of the Veridax? Come and take it. The leader snarled, signaling their forces to attack. But as the ships advanced, Kevin raised his hand, and the golden energy coalesced into a massive wave. The ships were engulfed, their systems shutting down as the energy overwhelmed their circuits. One by one, they drifted, powerless, into the void. The leader's ship remained, its weapons charging for one final strike. Kevin focused, the energy swirling around him like a storm. With a final push, he unleashed a concentrated beam that struck the ship's core. The vessel disintegrated in a blinding flash, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Hours later, the Institute was quiet once more. Kevin sat in the lab, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. Vrillik approached, their gaze unreadable. "You've done what even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy could not," they said. "You've awakened the legacy of the Veridax and wielded it with precision. The galaxy owes you a debt." Kevin shook his head. "I didn't do it for the galaxy. I did it because I couldn't let them hurt the people here." Vrillik's mandibles twitched in approval. "A noble sentiment. But you must understand, this is only the beginning. There will be others who seek you out, for good or ill. Your journey is far from over." Kevin sighed, the weight of their words settling on his shoulders. "Yeah, I figured. But at least now I know what I'm fighting for." As he stepped outside, the stars stretched endlessly before him. For the first time, they didn't feel so distant. Whatever came next, Kevin knew he would face it head-on. After all, he wasn't just human anymore. He was something more. Something ancient. Something powerful. And he was ready. Kevin didn't sleep that night. The Institute had finally calmed, its staff and students cautiously returning to their routines, but Kevin's mind refused to follow suit. He wandered the darkened corridors, the glow of distant stars casting faint light through the Institute's long windows. Every step carried the weight of the galaxy, or so it felt. The truth wasn't that he had saved the Institute, nor even that he'd repelled the invaders. The real truth, the part he couldn't admit even to himself, was that he had liked it. That rush of energy, the control, the way his enemies crumbled under the power he had barely begun to understand. It terrified him. He reached a quiet observation lounge and sank into a seat, staring at the vastness of space. His reflection in the glass caught his eye, his face, his features, but somehow different. Subtler than the glowing energy from earlier, but undeniable. His eyes seemed sharper, his skin almost too perfect, as though his very DNA were still shifting. "I thought I'd find you here." Kevin turned to see Zix stepping into the room. The Zarian's antennae twitched nervously, but their gaze was steady. They folded two of their forearms across their chest while holding a small data pad in another. "Couldn't sleep?" Zix asked, settling into the chair beside him. Kevin sighed. "Would you, if you'd just turned into a walking light show and destroyed a fleet of warships?" Zix clicked thoughtfully. "Probably not. But you're still you, Kevin. Power doesn't change that." Kevin ran a hand through his hair. "Doesn't it, though? I felt it, Zix. That rush. It wasn't just about protecting the Institute. For a moment, I liked having that kind of control. It scares me." Zix tilted their head, their expression softening. "Maybe it should. Fear keeps you grounded, stops you from becoming reckless. But you use that power to help people, Kevin. That's who you are." Before Kevin could reply, the door to the lounge slid open. Vrillik entered, their exoskeleton gleaming faintly under the dim lights. They carried a small device, no larger than a data pad, and their mandibles clicked in a manner Kevin had come to associate with urgency. "We need to talk," Vrillik said without preamble. Kevin groaned. "Can it wait? I'm kind of in the middle of an existential crisis here." "Unfortunately, it cannot," Vrillik replied, their tone unyielding. They held up the device, which projected a holographic map of the galaxy. One section glowed bright red, pulsating ominously. "This is a long-range scan we conducted after the intruders fled. It appears they sent a distress signal before their ship was destroyed. Kevin's stomach sank. Let me guess, reinforcements. Correct, Vrilek said. But it's worse than that. The signal was picked up by multiple factions, pirates, warlords, and other unscrupulous entities. They're converging on this location as we speak, all drawn by the same lure, the power of the Veridax. Kevin slumped back in his chair. Great. So, what? We're a giant beacon now? Precisely, Vrilek said. And if we don't act quickly, this institute will be overrun. Zix leaned forward, their antennae rigid. What do we do? Evacuate? There's no time, Vrilek said. But there may be another way. Kevin, the energy you wielded earlier, it didn't just repel the invaders. It created a resonance field strong enough to disrupt their systems entirely. If we can amplify that field, it might be enough to deter or disable the incoming fleets. Kevin frowned. Amplify it how? Vrilek stepped closer, their gaze piercing. By fully unlocking the Veridax legacy within you. Kevin followed Vrilek and Zix back to the lab, his unease growing with each step. The resonance platform awaited him, surrounded by a team of scientists making frantic adjustments. The equipment now hummed with a low, almost predatory sound, as though it knew what was coming. Vrilek gestured for Kevin to step onto the platform. This process will push your connection to its limits. It will be painful, and there's no guarantee you'll survive. Kevin swallowed hard. You're really selling it. Humor is often a human defense mechanism, Vrilek observed. But this is no time for jokes. If we fail, the Institute, and potentially the galaxy, will suffer catastrophic consequences. Kevin glanced at Zix, who gave him an encouraging nod. You've got this, they said. You always do. With a deep breath, Kevin stepped onto the platform. The hum grew louder, vibrating through his entire body. As the machines powered up, the golden energy surged within him, stronger and fiercer than before. His vision blurred, and the world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sound. The city appeared again, clearer than ever. Kevin stood in its plaza, surrounded by the glowing obelisk and the Veridax figures. The alien who resembled him stepped forward, their expression unreadable. You have returned, the being said, their voice resonating in Kevin's mind. Do you now understand? Kevin shook his head. No. I don't understand any of this. Why me? Why now? Because the architects foresaw this moment, the being replied. The universe is chaos, always spiraling toward destruction. We built safeguards, but we could not protect them forever. You are the inheritor of our failings, and our hope. The obelisk pulsed, and Kevin felt its energy merging with his own. His body burned, his mind racing with knowledge he couldn't fully comprehend. Blueprints, formulas, and ancient languages flooded his thoughts, pieces of a puzzle assembling themselves in the depths of his consciousness. You must choose, the Veridax being said. Power is a tool, not a purpose. Will you wield it to create, or to destroy? Before Kevin could answer, the vision shattered, and he was back in the lab. His body glowed brighter than ever, the golden energy now streaked with streaks of violet and silver. He felt both infinite and impossibly small, a conduit for something far greater than himself. The fleets are here, a voice shouted from the control console. They've begun their attack. Kevin stepped down from the platform, his movements almost instinctive. Open the resonance field, he commanded, his voice carrying an authority he barely recognized as his own. Vrilek hesitated but complied. The lab systems activated, projecting Kevin's energy outward in a massive wave. The walls trembled as the resonance field expanded, enveloping the Institute and the space around it. Outside, the invading fleets faltered. Their ship's systems shut down, weapons falling silent as they drifted helplessly. Some attempted to flee, but the field's reach was too vast. Within minutes, the skies were clear, the threat neutralized. Kevin collapsed to his knees, the glow around him fading as exhaustion took hold. Zix and Vrilek rushed to his side, their expressions a mix of relief and awe. You did it, Zix said, their voice trembling. You stopped them. Kevin managed a weak smile. For now. Vrilic placed a hand on his shoulder. You've proven yourself more than worthy of the legacy you carry, Kevin. But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will not stop seeking the power of the Veridax. Kevin nodded, his gaze distant. I know. But I'm not afraid anymore. Whatever comes next. I'll be ready. He looked out at the stars, their light a reminder of the vast, untamed universe waiting beyond. For the first time, he felt like he belonged, not just to Earth, or the Institute, but to something far greater. The galaxy had given him a purpose. Now, it was up to him to decide how to fulfill it. The weeks that followed were a blur of recovery, training, and preparation. Kevin's actions had cemented his place in galactic history, though not in the way he'd expected when he first stepped onto the Intergalactic Institute's grounds. The news of his victory spread like wildfire, painting him as a figure of hope, danger, and mystery all at once. He hated it. Despite the acclaim, Kevin felt the weight of his new reality more than ever. The galaxy had shifted its focus onto him, and there was no going back to the quiet anonymity he once craved. Every moment was shadowed by questions he couldn't yet answer. What had the Veridax really left behind in him? And what would happen when the next threat emerged? He sat in the Institute's garden, the scent of alien flowers mingling with the faint hum of distant machinery. Zix joined him, as they often did, carrying a tray of brightly colored food cubes that looked questionably edible. They plopped into the seat across from him, clicking their mandibles in mock disapproval. You've got that brooding face again, Zix said, tossing a cube into their mouth. You should trademark it. Call it Lancer's Gloom. Kevin managed a faint smirk. You're hilarious. I'm serious, Zix continued, their tone softening. You've been running yourself ragged. Training non-stop, shutting yourself away in the lab with Vrilic. You've got to give yourself a break before you burn out. Kevin sighed, leaning back against the bench. A break? Zix, I just turned into a galactic lightning rod for power-hungry warlords and treasure hunters. If I don't stay ready, the next attack could wipe out everyone here. I can't afford to slow down. Zix's antennae twitched in frustration. You're not alone in this, Kevin. The Institute has resources. Friends. Me. You don't have to carry the galaxy's weight on your own. Kevin looked away, guilt prickling at him. Zix was right, but the truth was, he didn't trust himself. That rush of power still lingered at the edges of his thoughts, tempting him. What if the next time he couldn't control it? What if he became the very thing the galaxy feared? Before he could respond, a sharp chime interrupted them. Kevin's communicator buzzed, displaying a message from Vrilic. Come to the lab immediately. We've uncovered something. Kevin shot Zix an apologetic glance as he stood. Rain check on the pep talk? Zix rolled their eyes but waved him off. Just don't forget what I said. When Kevin arrived at the lab, Vrilic was hunched over a console, their segmented eyes fixed on a series of projections. The room was darker than usual, the only illumination coming from the faint glow of holographic schematics that floated in the air. What is it? Kevin asked, stepping closer. Vrilic turned, their mandibles clicking in excitement. We've located the Veridax archive. Kevin blinked. The what? The archive, Vrilic repeated. A central repository of their knowledge and technology. According to the resonance field scans, fragments of its location were encoded into your DNA. We've pieced them together. A holographic map materialized, displaying a distant star system shrouded in dense nebulae. Vrilic pointed to a small, faint marker. Here. The archive resides on a rogue planet, uncharted and isolated. If we can reach it, we may unlock the full potential of what you carry, and finally understand the Veridax's intentions. Kevin stared at the map, a mixture of awe and apprehension coursing through him. So, what's the catch? Vrilic's expression grew somber. The planet is surrounded by an energy field far stronger than anything we've encountered. Without the resonance abilities you've demonstrated, No ship can breach it. You are the key, Kevin. Of course I am, Kevin muttered, running a hand through his hair. What's a quest without a death trap? Vrillik didn't laugh. This is a monumental decision. The archive may contain answers, but it could also attract even greater dangers. Once its existence becomes known, the galaxy will descend upon it like vultures. Kevin fell silent, the weight of the choice pressing down on him. The thought of unlocking the archive was both thrilling and terrifying. If the Veridax had truly been architects of reality, as the intruders claimed, then their knowledge could reshape the galaxy, for better or worse. Do I even have a choice? He asked quietly. There is always a choice, Vrillik replied. But you must make it soon. The longer we wait, the greater the risk. 2 days later, Kevin found himself aboard a sleek research vessel, staring out at the endless void of space. Zix had insisted on coming along, much to Kevin's protest, and now sat beside him, fidgeting nervously with a data pad. This is insane, Zix muttered. We're flying straight into an uncharted death zone because of some ancient alien breadcrumbs in your DNA. I hope you know what you're doing. Yeah, Kevin said dryly. Me too. Vrillik stood at the helm, overseeing the ship's systems with calm precision. Approaching the rogue planet, they announced. Energy field detected. Preparing to engage the resonance interface. Kevin swallowed hard as the ship trembled, its systems straining against the invisible force surrounding the planet. The energy field shimmered faintly, a massive barrier of swirling light that seemed almost alive. It's now or never, Vrillik said, turning to Kevin. Focus. Channel the resonance. Kevin closed his eyes, reaching for the hum in his mind that had become both familiar and alien. The golden energy flared to life within him, filling the cabin with its warm glow. The ship's systems responded instantly, harmonizing with the field as though it were part of them. The barrier rippled, then parted, allowing the vessel to pass through. The moment they breached it, the turbulence stopped, and an eerie calm settled over the ship. Kevin opened his eyes to see the rogue planet below, a barren, desolate world shrouded in eternal twilight. We're in, Vrillik said, their voice filled with awe. The archive awaits. The surface of the planet was unlike anything Kevin had ever seen. The ground was smooth and metallic, reflecting the dim light of the nebula above. Strange structures jutted out at odd angles, their geometry impossible to comprehend. The air buzzed faintly, as though the planet itself were alive. At the center of it all stood the archive. It was a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light, its surface etched with the same glyphs Kevin had seen in his visions. As they approached, the obelisk-shaped structure seemed to react to him, its glow intensifying. This is it, Vrillik whispered, their voice almost reverent. The heart of the Veridax legacy. Kevin stepped forward, his entire body tingling with the same hum that had guided him here. The obelisk emitted a low tone, and the glyphs rearranged themselves, forming a passageway. He hesitated, glancing back at Zix and Vrillik. Stay here, he said. If something goes wrong. We're not leaving, Zix interrupted firmly. You don't have to do this alone. Kevin nodded, grateful for the support, and stepped inside. The interior of the archive was a kaleidoscope of light and sound, its walls shifting with every step Kevin took. At the center, a pedestal awaited, glowing faintly. As Kevin approached, a holographic figure materialized, an ancient Veridax, its presence both imposing and comforting. Child of two worlds, it said, its voice resonating through the chamber. You have come far. Now, you must decide the fate of the legacy you carry. What does that mean? Kevin asked, his voice trembling. The figure extended a hand, and the room filled with visions, of civilizations rising and falling, of unimaginable power used for both creation and destruction. The archive contains the tools to shape reality, the Veridax said. But it is not our place to decide its purpose. That choice is yours. Kevin stared at the visions, his heart pounding. He thought of Earth, of the Institute, of Zix and Vrillik. He thought of the power he'd already wielded, and the cost of using it. Finally, he spoke. I don't want to shape reality. I just want to protect it. The Veridax figure nodded. Then you shall be its guardian. The pedestal glowed brighter, and Kevin felt the energy within him surge to new heights. He wasn't just a link to the past anymore, he was the bridge to the future. When he stepped out of the archive, the stars seemed closer, their light more vivid. Zix smiled at him, relief and pride shining in their alien eyes. So, Zix said, grinning. What now? Kevin smiled back, his resolve stronger than ever. Now? We make sure the galaxy stays in one piece. For the first time, Kevin wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. The galaxy had given him power, responsibility, and a purpose. And he was ready to face whatever came next.